Welcome to the We Are Wake Tech podcast with your host, Wake Tech President, Dr. Scott Ralls.
Hello, I'm Scott Ralls, President of Wake Tech and the host of the We Are Wake Tech podcast. This month we have a special podcast because we're talking about something that's very important to Wake Tech, to our students, and to our entire college, our Quality Enhancement Plan, which is called Solve It, Say It. And now we're going to learn a little bit about how we got to Solve It, Say It, what Solve It, Say It is, what a Quality Enhancement Plan is. But it's important for us, so hopefully it's important for you too, as a listener of the We Are Wake Tech podcast. And we're joined today by two of our great faculty leaders who have led much of this process with a team of faculty and others from Wake Tech. Adrianne Leinbach, who's a senior professor of geology at Wake Tech and leads our QEP process, and Jacqueline Popp, who is a professor of sociology at Wake Tech and leads the assessment process for the QEP. Both have been great leaders for many years here at Wake Tech and taking on this unique role. So Adrianne, Jacqueline, thank you for your leadership and thank you for joining me today on the We Are Wake Tech podcast.
Glad to be here.
Yes, thank you.
Let's dive right in. And we usually like to start, give us just a little bit of the Adrianne and Jacqueline story about how you got to Wake Tech. How were we so fortunate to have you come to Wake Tech and play such a role that you've had at Wake Tech for a few years now? Adrianne, we'll start with you.
It's almost hard for me to remember how I got here because I've been here for quite some time. I've been here 25 years last month. First geologist at Wake Tech. So, and came here from working in industry before. Have loved the 25 years. This is my second time working on a QEP. Taught geology on a couple different campuses and was the first person, I think, in math and sciences to teach online. So been doing that since 2002. So good times.
That's a great Wake Tech history. Great Wake Tech history. Jacqueline, tell us your Wake Tech story.
Yes, I came here right after I finished graduate school in Georgia, and I started out part-time and loved being at a community college. I teach sociology, and so having a really diverse student population is important to me. So I settled here, and I've been here, I did about a year part-time, and then I've been here 17 or almost 18 years full-time. And at the college, I've done all kinds of things over the years, but I've worked on assessment pretty much the entire time I've been here. So I've done department, division. I worked on our previous QEP EPIC. So I'm really excited about working on this project and seeing our students grow.
You both have a lot of experience, have seen a lot of Wake Tech growth and watch us evolve over the years and played a key role in our evolution. And now you do it again through the QEP. And we use this term, we'll say it over and over. It's an acronym, QEP, that stands for Quality Enhancement Plan. But a lot of people are probably asking right now, what is a QEP? What is a Quality Enhancement Plan? Can you tell us, Adrianne or Jacqueline, what is a QEP? What is Quality Enhancement?
Well, Quality Enhancement Plan is something that has to be done every time that we seek reaccreditation with SAC-COC.
Okay, so what is SAC-COC?
Let's see, Jacqueline, I might need your help with this. Southern Association of Colleges and Dr. Ralls, do you know the rest of that?
I do. I'll give you a lifeline here. Southern Association of Colleges, Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, and then the COC stands for Commission on Colleges. So we're going through our 10-year reaffirmation of our accreditation right now, which requires a QEP, Quality Enhancement Plan.
And QEPs can be a variety of different things. Our last big QEP was EPIC, which was timely for getting people online with what happened with COVID. But we had already talked about through strategic planning that our next QEP was going to be an area of learning. So that's what we focused on. And in the QEP, you want to show improvement. You have a plan for it. And so that's one of the things that we've been working on is coming up with getting things directed, how we're going to assess it, how we're going to plan it, how we're going to roll it out and provide trainings that are needed for both faculty, staff, and students. So Jacqueline, you have anything to add to what our QEP is from that?
that's really it. And, there's a large assessment portion to this that most faculty don't interact with as much, but, it allows us to see how our students are performing, or the college is performing, depending on the kind of QEP that's chosen.
And I'll just add a QEP, Quality Enhancement Plan process, and the whole activity you undertake as a result of it's a really big deal. It cuts across an entire institution or college, which at Wake Tech's a big deal because we're so big. And for that reason, involves lots of people. It really takes everybody's engagement and involvement. And when it works, when it has impact, it impacts students broad and in every particular part of Wake Tech. You both mentioned having your experience working on the last QEP, which was, we called it EPIC, it was really our emphasis on distance education, how we improved our teaching for distance education. And wow, did that have impact? Tell folks a little bit about EPIC just to get a sense of what the depth and breadth of a QEP is.
So with EPIC, it focused on kind of two major prongs. One was student preparedness. And so that included things like getting modules for students to help them understand Blackboard. And there were several different ones. And then and kind of assessing that to make sure the students were understanding both kind of norms at the college, but also understanding the online process. And then the second half was the faculty preparedness piece, which included many more people than just faculty. But it took certification process, and it was a 30-hour certification that faculty are still actually taking today. So it's been with us for many years now. And then it actually developed later in the project a master certification, which some of us have, where we got to kind of go beyond and elevate our courses. So, but in the assessment piece of things, there was a ton of different assessment behind it. And there were places where faculty participated in that too, focus groups, filling out surveys, so, it was just really present at the college for those 5 years.
And I will say, I don't know that there could ever be a more timely QEP than we had the last time, because that was focused on distance education, our evolution and becoming, much better in what we do with distance education. And 4 or 5 years after the initiation, COVID hit, when we were pretty much almost entirely online for almost 2 years. So, well, I don't think we should, hopefully we wouldn't have a reason to need to be as timely, but boy, that was a timely QEP. Now, flipping to where we are now, solve it, say it, a focus on problem solving. That is a unique chunk of stuff to take on. Tell us a little bit, Adrianne, how did we get to the focus on problem solving with an emphasis on communication? And as we're saying, solve it, say it for our QEP.
So we originally formed a group, and our group's job, or the mission that we set out, were to talk to our fellow employees, to look at data, to look back
how was the group formed? Who was the group?
So when the group was originally formed, we actually asked every division to send us volunteers. And a lot of the original volunteers, when we first did the Reach and Rally and had people come out, people were asked to volunteer. So the first people that we worked with were to take the list of everybody who said they would like to help. And then the next thing was to try to make sure that we had coverage from every single division, because we didn't want anybody not to have input. So we took the
academic division. So is that what you mean? Or
careers, everyone. So we took, wanted representation from all. And I think we did have representation from all except for one originally. And we put the group together. We asked everybody to look at data. So we brought data in, Wake Tech data, anything that we asked for, they helped us look at to see where we saw issues in these areas of learning. And it seemed like what we kept coming to over and over again was problem solving / critical thinking, and also communication. So we originally narrowed it down to 4 different topics. And although they sound a lot the same, because one was going to be problem solving, one was going to be communication, one was going to be problem solving with an emphasis on communication, and the other was a global item that we were looking at. So we put those 4. We wrote white papers and put them out to vote and put the evidence, put the data in, ask our fellow faculty to look at it and tell us what they thought. And when the votes came back, it was for problem solving with an emphasis on communication. And so that led us through the first part. We got that approved, put it through the board, lots of different groups, which led us to taking problem solving with an emphasis on communication and narrowing it down. Because if you go out and just look at problem solving and critical thinking for definitions, you are going to get a multitude of definitions. And so we put together another group that contains some of the same people, but this time we did have representation from every career group, every different academic group, all had somebody on this committee. And the first thing we did was say, talk to your fellow employees and come in with what your definition of problem solving is. And of course, everybody came in with a different definition. So we worked really hard, spent an entire meeting or 2, didn't we, Jacqueline, on just coming up with what definition we think served all of Wake Tech as a whole. And so we came up with a good problem solving definition. And I could probably throw that to you off the top of my head, but I better not, because I might give you the exact wrong one, but came up with that. And then after that, we started coming up with what are our goals? What do we want to see come out of this? And the main thing is we wanted students and faculty to know, why are we doing this? So in those goals, we came up with, why is it important? Well, if you talk to employers out there, every employer and every single one where there's a list of what they want to see with people coming in, it says, we want to see communication, we want to see problem solving. And those are always in the top 10 and sometime in the first 2 or 3. And one of the things that a lot of people say that they're not seeing right now is the confidence in problem solving from our students when they come out. And so it doesn't mean those skills aren't there. It just means that we need to build those up. So, while we're teaching those in our classes, what we're hoping to do, and one of our goals is to train faculty and staff. So we're all using the same sort of terminology, the same words. So students are going to hear it over and over again, and we're going to get them following a routine. We're going to come up with a process that students are going to use, and they're going to use it in their personal life, hopefully, in their school life, and in their work life when they move forward. Anything I forgot there?
Jacqueline, you have anything to add?
I would just say that it's going to be really neat from an assessment standpoint, because we've got a lot of different data sets. Some of them are national surveys, and so we're going to be able to track this data across time. So it'll be really interesting to see if our students actually do start to feel more confident. And then also seeing samples of student work as well over time to see actual improvements, hopefully.
Well, and you got to this place, it sounds like, because you brought a wide swath of faculty and others from the college who identified the general areas to look, and then you use data to drill down to what specifically do we pay attention to as an impact area for us in impacting positively student learning. Let me just ask your opinions a little bit, because I know this is may not be as data based in your, what your opinion may be, but what do you think it is about problem solving, critical thinking, in this case, emphasizing also how you communicate your problems? Is that something you think that from a faculty perspective or others that you're seeing that has become even more important over time, or there's like weaknesses that have evolved over time, or why do you think it's emerged as the big area for us to address?
I would love to take this one.
Please do.
I feel like on a personal level that I can see how it would benefit my students, but also how it would benefit myself. We just, as a sociologist, we're in such a time of technological change with AI and just societal change in general that I feel like all of us need some help with problem solving personally. And there is data to back that up too, but I feel like, one thing that as we were in all of these steering committee meetings with faculty from all over the college and some staff as well, that kept coming up over and over and over again was everybody felt like we were getting practice as we were working through this particular problem on this project. People kept coming into the meetings and saying it over and over, that we need practice with this as well. And, how are we going to move forward with these changes to education that are coming from AI? And so while maybe it's not technically about AI, to me, we need to figure out problem solving skills for faculty and staff as well as the students. So that's just my personal opinion.
Guess, you brought up AI. I guess for us as humans, problem solving can be our differentiator in that kind of world.
That's true. That's true.
Adrianne?
I think it's gotten so easy today in this day and time, and I hate to sound that, it makes me sound like an old person, but it's so easy just to type in a question now into our phones and get an answer. And I know periodically when I'm talking to like students or I'm telling a story and my students will be like, why didn't you just use your cell phone? And I'm like, we didn't have them back then. And so there was more problem solving process, I think, because it wasn't so easy to get an answer. Sometimes you had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I'm a science teacher, and so I can say we have a process, scientific method, where we start and then you test your hypothesis, you see if it works. And people don't realize that process is something you use in everyday life or should use. I mean, I use my example to students. When you're driving down the road, you have tested the hypothesis in the past on, can I make this turn or can I not? And you test it when you turn and either get hit or you don't, and then you keep working from there. So that may sound silly, but a lot of things in life are problem solving processes that way. And once you start allowing your mind to think, okay, what's the first thing I need to do is determine my problem and then move from there, it sort of lets you not panic. And I think that's one of the things people now are so used to sometimes just being told and not having to figure out how they get there.
Yeah.
And so if you have this process and you've worked on it before, hopefully for both instructors and for students, they're going to be able to stop and not panic and say, what's the problem and where am I trying to get to?
I think you're so right about what you're saying, because I used to think that, a course that I took as an undergraduate, but then in graduate school, that was so important to me. And I would not have felt this at the time, but looking back on it, thought the most important course I may have ever taken was research methods, scientific research methods, because essentially what you're learning is problem solving. That's the basis behind science. And I think you're right. I think sometimes certain things can become crutches for us. I used to teach statistics, and I remember when the first, statistical packages were coming out and teaching, and it seemed like sometimes it become a little bit of a crutch. You pour the answers in the top, and an answer comes in the bottom, and all this problem solving happens in between. But unless you know how to work to think in that same way, you don't know what the answer means. So I think our faculty again are probably right, have the finger on the pulse.
May I say one more thing?
Yes,
I feel like we focused on the problem solving side and haven't really discussed communication as much, but why the two things together are so important. We talked a lot about how obviously there's kind of the share it piece at the end, but say it as share it, right? Right, exactly. But really, as we've kind of in our society, we're moving more towards collaboration in our work, or at least I perceive that we are. Being able to work with others at each step along the way through kind of a problem solving process is so important. And one thing I was really struck by as we worked on putting together the big QEP proposal that we'll be sending to SAC-COC was just that how these processes are different in different areas, like HVAC's the one in the report. But it's different in different areas, but we're still all using the same basic process. And so how you kind of map that onto different areas. So it may seem that sociology and HVAC are pretty different, but actually we're all going through some of these similar processes. And I just thought that was really neat and gave me some insight that I wouldn't normally get as we're kind of collaborating across the college too.
And we all have to communicate and sometimes, this podcast is a good example. We'll fall into we'll start talking about QEPs and SAC-COC, and folks in the world out there don't know our acronyms in our world. And we have to think about how we're communicating what we're doing. So I appreciate, Jacqueline, you always bringing back for us too that this is problem solving with an emphasis on communication, because it's not just solving the problem, it's communicating your solutions. Now, I was in a meeting. I tell the stories right after the faculty and your group had kind of determined this is what we're going to focus on, and we're starting to think about what are we going to do and how we're going to do it. I was in a meeting with the State Board of Community Colleges. They were having a panel with 2 college presidents and 2 of the largest, fastest growing technology employers in our state. One was from Wake County, one was from another county. And the employer from another county, a site lead for another big employer, we were all asked, or they were asked, the business folks, what's the one thing you think you're not seeing that you need to see more from community college graduates right now, the graduates that you're hiring? And immediately she said, problem solving skills. And I kind of wanted to get up and do a little dance at that point. They wouldn't have known what I was saying, but that was her thing. And I think for many, whether you're inside, like our faculty have been in this process, but outside too, we're seeing and hearing that. Now, saying all that, problem solving is not an easy thing to tackle. Problem solving with communication. I mean, if we were wanting to say, what's the easiest quality enhancement plan we could pick, this would probably not be it. Although we didn't say what's the easiest, we said what's the most important thing we could have an impact on now. So how are we going to impact it? We've picked something that's timely, important. Now, what are we going to do about it?
Well, I can start with that, like Jacqueline finished with talking about sort of looking at the assessment. The first thing we're going to do is provide training for both our staff and our faculty. And there's going to be 2 different courses we're going to start with, and then a third that's going to be optional. So the first course is going to involve common language. And like Jacqueline was saying, we're teaching problem solving across the college, but we're not really giving it a common language. So sometimes the students may not realize it. So coming together in that first course, we're going to learn a common language. We're going to start talking about teaching it in your classrooms, give some ideas. And then the second course is going to be standards and basically talking about ideas for you to be able to put those assignments together in your class and how to assess them. But one important thing that I just mentioned there is I didn't just say faculty, I said staff. Because when we started putting this together, we talked to a lot of different people and got a lot of support. So our care teams are going to use this process when they talk to people that are coming in, when they need help. And of course, it can't always be used, but whenever it's significant, they're going to try to use the same side of terminology and ask the student, well, let's figure out the problem and go from there and use the process. We're going to have the ILC is going to make us some courses that are going to help students. We talk to all kinds of staff. So anywhere that can go in with staff, they're going to use that. So the training's not just for faculty, and it's not going to be a long training, a couple-hour training for the first course, a couple-hour training for the second course. It's going to start in person, and then eventually we'll move online for refresher, and that's going to help you bring those in. And we're going to let some courses, it's already going to be pulled out in some courses, but other courses are going to be able to come in as a group and ask to get certified and go through a process to be able to teach and assess problem solving in their classes. And so I think that's going to be something that's going to be pretty exciting for people to use. And then eventually students that meet certain standards are going to be able to have digital badging that they can take with them and show employers, look, I've got this from Wake Tech. I had to do this to earn it and I feel good about it. So we're going to be excited for them to show that. And then something for instructors to also put down that they've been through this process and are teaching it and know. And excuse me, I think it's going to be excellent too, because we're all going to be assessing it in the same way. So
yeah, it sounds like, and before we turn to Jacqueline, I ask about the very difficult part. How are we going to assess it, and how do we know if we're making a difference? It sounds like, Adrianne, what you're saying too is we're not just going to talk about it and lecture about it, but we're going to try to model it as well, because you're suggesting all the different areas of our college that we're going to try to model this process of effective problem solving as an example for our students, and a way we can also be more effective as well.
Yes, exactly.
Now, Jacqueline, how are we going to know if we're making a difference?
I do want to say one thing
Yes, please.
about what was just said, which is that in case there's faculty watching this and thinking about how we just mentioned and referenced EPIC, these courses are not, it's not going to be like a 30-hour training. So it's going to be 1 or 2 hours per, module or whatever. So I just wanted to say that to kind of,
You're afraid there was a little ripple of fear that was going across.
yeah,
the-
I can just sense it coming.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of assessment, I'm really excited. There'll be the assessment piece that, well, let me start. There's kind of two big pieces of assessment. The most important piece is what the students will be learning. And so as a part of Gen Ed assessment, there's a problem solving set of standards that will help guide us in creating assignments for certain courses. And then, as Adrianne already said, we'll be able to, others will be able to join as well. So we're going to be assessing those courses. But we also have, what I'm very excited about is we have actual data from our local employers. So we'll be able to actually see if they feel like, because we already have baseline data, so we'll be able to see if they feel like our students are actually increasing in their problem solving skills across time. And again, this is a 5-year project. We're not expecting to see these things now. And then we have a lot of other indicators to kind of let us know along the way how we're doing, assessment inside the modules that we create. We're going to have one thing faculty may notice pretty soon is some changes on the course evaluations for students to include problem solving. And it's really helpful for us if faculty encourage the students to take those surveys. And there's several other pieces as well, but we're going to be using the SESI data. And if you don't know what that is, there's national surveys that we're going to use a couple of to pull questions that are related to problem solving that we can track. I think we do them every 2 years. So we'll be able to track before and kind of through the duration of the project. So I could go on all day about assessment,
But it sounds like you feel pretty comfortable we're going to be able to tell if we're making a difference.
Yeah, I think we will. I think we will.
Now, let me ask this. It sounds like we've had very broad college-wide involvement and engagement to narrow down to get to solve it, say it, problem solving with an emphasis on communication. But it's going to take that much broad engagement in the what we do in the implementation. We're really going to need our whole college community in this process if we're going to make a difference. Is that fair?
Yes,
Definitely
yes.
fair.
Mm-hmm.
As we're looking at the implementation process, we're right now looking at a team that's going to put together these 2 courses. And once again, we're looking for people from every different division in the college. And as we do that and we put these courses together, that's where we want to come up with our objectives and to make sure that we're teaching to every different group. And eventually some of these groups may even want to work together. Like, I think the thing that's really exciting about this is if you already have something you're teaching in your class on problem solving, which we all do, you might could modify it slightly. And now all of a sudden it's using some of that common language, and then you can share it with other people and they might be able to adapt it. And sort of like, I know you're probably not going to take something from HVAC, but we might all be surprised and taking an idea once people start sharing what's working for them and putting it out there. And other people are like, wow, I've got an idea how I can use that in my class. So I think it's going to be exciting for both the assessment, for the students, and I think instructors may get some nice ideas from other groups and other instructors as we do this, and I'll learn about it together.
Absolutely. Jacqueline, you look like you were going to chime in and reaffirm or say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say that last year while I was working on assessment, I was kind of working with some of these ideas with my social diversity students. And so I actually, this is anecdotal, of course, but I brought this to them. I explained to them what our problem solving process was so far. And then we worked on case studies together and where they did some problem solving, like to solve creating an event together, but, and things like that. And the students just lit up. They loved having problem solving, in the classroom. And so that would be something that would be, easily shared with other people. And so anyway, I just think that the students are really going to enjoy this if we create things that will engage them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to close by sharing one other anecdote from last week. Actually, I was attending with a few other folks from Wake Tech, the North Carolina Chamber, a group of businesses, but the North Carolina Chamber Education and Workforce Conference. They do it once a year, and they had a keynote speaker, an education leader who was from New York, and he had a slide he made as part of his presentation. He said, here's a group, it was approximately 8 skills that employers say are the most important to them right now, but said that there's not a university or college in the country right now that includes those skills as part of their transcripts or what their focus is. And I looked at it, that group of 8 to 10 skills was problem solving and communication. So I kind of wanted to raise my hand and say, well, just give us a little time here. We are moving in that direction. And I want to thank our two of our chief movers who have been so important to this process to get us to this point. As we move forward with our emphasis on problem solving with an emphasis on communication. Adrianne Leinbach, our senior professor of geology, and who leads this process, and Jacqueline Popp, leading the assessment process, who's a professor of sociology and have had unbelievable impact to date on Wake Tech, and going to be even more so with this very, very important project for Wake Tech. So Adrianne, Jacqueline, I want to thank you for first and foremost, for all that you do for our students and for Wake Tech. Your leadership and has really made a difference here. Thank you for joining me today on the We Are Wake Tech podcast. And for all of our listeners out there, thank you for joining us as well. We value your listening to us. Please tell others about the podcast. They can find us on Apple or Spotify or wherever they look for podcasts. Please rate us and tune in next month to the We Are Wake Tech podcast. And again, thank you to our guests, Adrianne and Jacqueline, for joining us today on the We Are Wake Tech podcast.
I'm Joshua McKinney with your Wake Tech News Update. A new academic year at Wake Tech started with the opening of our newest location in Wendell and another surge in enrollment. Wake Tech welcomed more than 25,000 degree-seeking students for the first day of the fall semester. It's the highest fall enrollment in college history. More than 8,500 of those students are new to Wake Tech, which is also a record. Vice President Kamala Harris presented her economic policy proposal at the Hendrick Center for Automotive Excellence on the Scott Northern Wake campus. Approximately 300 supporters filled the Capitol Automotive Lab, where hands-on automotive system technology and electric vehicle training takes place. Wake Tech will launch a unique cybersecurity boot camp thanks to an $882,000 cooperative agreement from the National Science Foundation. The 30-week boot camp, currently under development in collaboration with industry and community partners, seeks to bring STEM opportunities to students typically underrepresented in those fields. And finally, as classes began at Wake Tech East, Wake Tech President Dr. Scott Ralls greeted students with donuts. He also surprised new student Jonas Hooks with a $250 scholarship from the Wake Tech Foundation to help pay for books. Ralls calls these scholarships golden tickets, and he handed them out to one student at each campus during Welcome Week, along with chocolate bars made by students in the Baking and Pastry Arts program. And that's your Wake Tech News Update.
Pro Tip Shorts! Hi, my name is Tennille and I'm a student ambassador here at Wake Tech, currently studying project management. And here are 5 tips for new and upcoming students here at Wake Tech. Tip number 1, be prepared. Know when your classes start, when they end, and if they're accelerated or not. You don't want to be caught by surprise on your first day. Number 2, be open. You're going to meet a ton of new people on your first day. Make sure you look out for some new friends. Number 3, Make sure you know what campus your classes are on and how far they are from you. Wake Tech is filled with students from all across Wake County. Make sure you know which campus you're at. Number 4, stay on top of your work. Make sure you have easily planned out your week, you have a schedule going on. You're going to get a ton of work here at college, and you want to make sure you stay on top of all of it. Number 5, syllabuses. Go through your syllabuses. You can easily plan out your entire semester and set yourself up for success. So those are the 5 tips I have for you this upcoming semester.
Pro Tip Shorts!
Thank you for listening to the We Are Wake Tech podcast. Join us next month for more insightful conversations about the programs and people of Wake Tech and how the college changes lives every day. Be sure to subscribe to your favorite podcast app to have each episode delivered right to your computer or mobile device. For more, find us at podcast.waketech.edu. To learn more about Wake Tech's exceptional educational opportunities, visit waketech.edu.